How do you teach a dog to wear a shock collar? In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at shock collars, explain what they are and how to use them to train your dog, and help you determine if they are the best option for you and your pet. Thinking of training your dog with a shock collar? Although they are a common tool for dog training, shock collars are divisive. While some people worship them, others consider them cruel. What is the real truth? Are shock collars useful training aids for dogs, or are e-collars just an upgrade? Let's check. Personally, I believe that the e-collar is the greatest dog training tool ever created. We can generate Pavlovian effects with many of the innovations that we now have with the e-collar, such as GPS trackers, vibration modes, and tone modes. And it has really given us more options and variety when it comes to training a dog off-leash. What is positive reinforcement dog shock collar training? Shock collars can be useful training tools when used correctly. However, like every training method, there are right and wrong ways to use them. Positive reinforcement is used to reward your dog for good behavior. So, how should I proceed? Let's see what is involved. Try commanding your dog to do something, like sit, stay, or come. Give your dog a treat when they do what you ask. Repeat this process until your dog regularly obeys your commands. Also, remember to reward your dog when he does what you ask. If your dog does not obey the command, shock them with the collar. Make sure you only shock them when they disobey orders and never without reason. Additionally, when your dog obeys commands, be sure to praise them. Don't just shock your dog. This will only confuse and frighten them. They are only shocked when they disobey a directive. Once your dog regularly obeys commands, you can gradually reduce the use of shocks and goodies. Consistently reward your dog for good behavior. In addition, repeat the commands regularly so that your dog does not forget them. What exactly is the difference between an e-collar and a shock collar? You've probably heard the terms e-collar and shock collar used in the same phrase to refer to the same thing. The term e-collar refers to an electronic collar, and shock collar is another term for the same thing. To discourage consumers from using the collar, the name shock collar was used publicly. Animal rights groups have raised their concerns about e-collars, and they conveniently use the word shock to scare people away from the items. Their dog does not want a physical or electrical shock. When used correctly, an e-collar or shock collar will not harm your dog. You may be asking what the difference is between an electronic collar and a shock collar. The truth is that the product is basically the same thing, with different names used by different people. Technically, there is no difference between the two names, which are often used interchangeably. Since there isn't a difference between an e-collar and a shock collar, there really is no difference between the two. However, the following information will help you learn more about the e-collar and how it will benefit you and your dog in a safe way. What is the function of the shock collar? Shock collars are available in various colors and sizes, but they are larger than conventional collars to accommodate a small box and the radio-controlled electronic gadget. There are also two probes that sit on the dog's skin and deliver an electric shock on command. It can be activated manually or automatically using a remote control or a proximity sensor. This shock is what most people don't like. Despite the fact that the word shock sounds harsh, these stimuli are intended to be harmless. Although the highest setting can sting a bit, most shock settings equate to a moderate tickle while still being strong enough to get a dog's attention. The right way to train a dog with a shock collar. Now that we've discussed what positive reinforcement shock collar training is, let's look at how to perform it. Here are some tips on how to properly train your dog with it. 1. Buy a high-quality shock collar. You get what you pay for when it comes to shock collars. As a result, it's critical to choose a high-quality collar from a reputable company. This ensures the safety and effectiveness of the collar. It is also critical to ensure that the collar fits properly. An ill-fitting collar can be painful for your dog and potentially cause injury. A good collar should include the following features: a nice comfortable fit, sturdy construction, adjustable settings, a remote control, a safety shut-off feature, 2. Start with basic and traditional training. It is important to start with basic and traditional training before using the shock collar. This will help your dog learn and associate commands with positive reinforcement. Basic commands for your dog to learn include sit, stay, down. You can start using the shock collar once your dog has learned these commands. You should only start using the collar once your dog has learned basic commands. 3. Allow your dog to get used to the shock collar. Start by attaching a collar to your dog and let them wear it around the house. Start by putting it on them for a short time and gradually increasing the amount of time they wear it. Furthermore, give enough goodies and praise so they associate the collar with something positive. You should also show and hear the remote control to them so they understand what it is. You can start using the collar for training after your dog is familiar with it. 4. Show your dog the behavior you need from him. The first step in using a shock collar is to show your dog the desired behavior. If you want your dog to sit, for example, make sure he is sitting before commanding him. Give him a verbal cue such as sit or stay if he is not sitting. Give him a mild shock if he doesn't respond. The shaking should be enough to get his attention while not hurting him. Give him a treat and praise him when he responds to the cue. 5. Use only the lowest level of correction. When training, it is critical to use only the lowest level of correction, such as vibration mode. The idea is to get your dog's attention instead of hurting him. If you find that the lowest level of correction doesn't get his attention, try a higher level. However, be careful with the gradual increase in level. You should also know your dog's body language. If he seems uncomfortable or screams, remove the collar and talk to a professional trainer. 6. Ask professional dog trainers for help. If you are having trouble training your dog with a shock collar, you should seek professional help. Dog trainers have experience using these gadgets and can advise you on how to use them properly. They can also help you troubleshoot any issues you may be experiencing. Whatever problem you're facing, they've probably seen it before and can help you solve it. Professional dog trainers can also provide alternative training methods that may be more beneficial for your dog. Shock collar training is a great way to train your dog, but it must be done correctly. 7. Don't just rely on the shock collar. Try other methods as well. While shock collar training can be successful, it should not be used primarily. Dogs are intelligent creatures that quickly learn to associate shock with the precise action you are trying to prevent. If you use a shock collar to stop your dog from barking, he may start associating the tilt with the act of barking rather than the specific behavior you want to stop. Furthermore, dogs can become desensitized to shocks over time. This means that even if used correctly, they may no longer respond to shocks. In addition to the shock collar, other training methods should be used for these reasons. This will ensure that your dog is generally well-rounded and obedient. Adding positive reinforcement to shock collar training is a very good idea. When your dog exhibits the desired behavior, you reward him with a treat or some positive attention. Hey, if you're interested, extra dog training resources is in the description below. Frequently asked questions. How effective are shock collars for training dogs? Yes, they can be effective training tools. Although controversial, shock collars can be beneficial when applied properly. It is very important to use them in addition to other training methods, not in place of them. How much time does it take to train a dog with a shock collar? A dog can be trained with a shock collar in 2 to 4 weeks on average. However, the dog's age, intelligence, and previous training will affect this. In addition, keep in mind that some dogs may not fully respond to shock collar training. Can shock collars train dogs? They can indeed be useful for training purposes. Shock collars are controversial, but when used properly, they can be beneficial. It is important to add them to other training methods rather than replace them. When should you start using a dog with a shock collar? When other methods of dog training fail, you should start using a shock collar. For example, you can try using a shock collar if your dog does not respond to verbal directions or positive rewards. Will my dog be more aggressive if I use a shock collar? No, using a shock collar will not make your dog angry. However, it is very important to use them properly. your dog may become hostile as a result of improper or abusive collar use. In general, a shock collar training can be a useful tool. It is important to remember that dogs are creatures of habit and will quickly learn which behaviors result in startle and which are rewarded praise or treat. When using a shock collar to train your dog, as long as you are patient, reliable, and fair, the two of you can have a satisfying, long-lasting relationship. Do you use a shock collar to train your dog? What kind of training do you like? If you're looking for more related videos, click this one. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.